Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our virtual alumni workshop on understanding your employee benefits and common misconceptions. Before we begin, we are going to take a moment here to pause so that everyone has a chance to log on. While we wait, feel free to type your name, grad year if you're an alum, and what brought you here today in the chat box, and we will begin in just a moment. Well, my name is Molly Clevin, and I'm from the University of Minnesota Duluth Alumni Relations team. In today's Alumni Career Workshop, you will learn the basics when choosing your benefits and how to avoid common mistakes. Today's session is a webinar format, meaning you have the ability to engage using the chat box and the Q&A button. If you have questions for the presenter, please use the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. Additionally, just with the nature of this type of presentation, we would ask that if you have any personal questions, that you would just hold off on asking those. We have a different process for how we're planning to handle those with some one-on-one meetings with Vince, if that feels like something that you would need. So just try to avoid some of the personal questions. So with that, now to introduce our guests. Today we are joined by UMD alum and Bulldogs of the Last Decade member, Vince Darling. Vince has been in the financial services industry since 2018 and became a certified financial planner certificate in 2022. He graduated from UMD in 2019 and went on to work with the Stonebridge Group as a financial advisor. He specializes in comprehensive financial planning, investment management, tax planning, and student loan planning. In his spare time, Vince often travels back to Duluth with his fiancée, Sadie, who is also a UMD alum and enjoys golfing, water skiing, mountain biking, and being a bulldog. It is now my pleasure to hand it over to Vince.
Hey, thanks, Molly. Really appreciate it. Hey, thanks everyone for coming out today during your lunch to learn some things about employee benefits and common misconceptions I see when people bring up their employee benefits. Also, a shout out to all those recent UMD grads recently. So congratulations if that's one of you. But today we got a lot to talk about with employee benefits. So let's just get going on it because there's a lot to cover in a short amount of time here. So Molly really went over this already. My name is Vince Darling. I've been in the financial planning business since 2018. A lot of the hobbies she already discussed, and recently got engaged to my fiancée, Sadie, who I recently met, not recently, a while ago, back at UMD. So why am I doing this today? The main reason is my goal is to help people maximize their wealth by helping educate them about personal finance topics. What I have seen in the past with different clients or people that I've met with is there's just not really much guidance when it comes to employee benefits. This includes things, you didn't really learn much of it in high school, maybe not in college, unless you were in maybe a finance course. And now you're thrown into your first job or even jobs down the road, and they give you a packet to fill out and say, hey, bring this to me by Monday when you start your job. I just didn't really like that kind of thought of, having to make all these decisions with not having a lot of education about it. So just really want to touch on the biggest things I see when I talk to people, and maybe this can help you, and maybe you can go back and review your employee benefits when you have those and when you get the chance. So biggest learning topics today is going to be the 401k and 403b plans, HSAs and FSAs, and lots about insurance. That tends to be a big value add for employee benefits. That includes group life insurance, health insurance, group disability insurance. We're going to briefly talk on pensions, and then really briefly talk about employer stock options for now. So let's just jump right in it. 401ks and 403b plans. 401ks and 403bs tend to be a family's largest retirement account, mainly because it's when they start first investing to begin with. They get their first job, their first paycheck, and they're starting to put money in their 401k. What a lot of people don't understand is the 401k or 403b are just the type of an account. It's not the investment, meaning it's just a holding take. It's the way that it's how you pay tax on it. But it doesn't mean if you're putting money in your 401k that it's invested. I mean, most of the time I hear things when I talk to people, I'll ask a simple question. Hey, what are you invested in that 401k? I get one of three answers. First, I'm invested in this specific mutual fund. Or I don't know, my HR or someone at work helped me set it up and I haven't really looked at it since, or I really have no idea. So it's a two-step process. You're putting money in the 401k and then you invest within it. So that's the first biggest thing I see. Within the account, you have the ability to invest in funds, like mentioned. Normally, the biggest one is mutual funds. Sometimes you can do ETFs, sometimes stocks, not all the time. All have the standard. When you have a 401k, you all have the standard 401k or 403b option, but some have Roth options, which include, an after-tax additive to that. We're going to discuss matching, vesting schedules, and contribution limits, as well as kind of the difference between the traditional and the Roth options. A lot of people don't know the difference, but we're going to just do a quick example of that for you. But starting out, biggest question I get, what is a mutual fund? I understand kind of what a stock is. You kind of own a company. Bonds are kind of debt of that company. All a mutual fund is it's a bunch of different stocks or bonds put together into one investment run by a fund manager of that company. And within that, there's an NAV, a net asset value, that you have what the mutual fund is worth. So it could be, $28 a share. Let's say it's $28 a share and it goes up to $35 a share. That means you're making money in the mutual fund. If the NAV goes down, that means you're losing money in the mutual fund. All investments have risk. Mutual fund is just a type of investment you can be in. People invest in these mainly because, an individual stock, you have to pay maybe, $100, $200 a share to buy one individual stock in one company, where in a mutual fund, you can put a lot of different companies into one mutual fund and invest in that. So it's an easy way to diversify your money through many different companies. That's why they're widely used in 401k plans. So what is that difference between a traditional and a Roth when you have your 401k or 403b? Let's look on the example on the left here. So the traditional will reduce your income for the year. Generally useful if your income puts you in a high tax bracket. And what is the reason for that? Let's hop right in it. So taxable income, let's say you made $50,000 for the year. If you put $3,000 into your 401k plan, your traditional side, you now only have to pay tax on $47,000, not the initial $50,000 that you made. So it reduces your taxes when you put the money in the 401k plan. This is called tax deferred, meaning you don't pay tax on this money until you take it out in retirement. So once you reach 59 and a half, there's no more 10% penalty of taking out money early from a 401k. So let's look at this. Your income in retirement is $60,000. You want to withdraw $5,000 out of your 401k. Well, now your taxable income goes up to 65. You didn't pay tax when you put it in. You have to pay tax when you take it out. That's the simplest terms of being called tax deferred. Okay. Let's move on to the Roth. How does that differ? Let's jump right in it. Your taxable income for 2023, let's say it's $50,000. Same income, you contribute $3,000 to your Roth 401k side. Okay, the income you are now taxed on is $50,000. It did not reduce your income. You're still paying taxable income on all your income that you made. But what's the benefit? The benefit is it gets to grow tax-free, meaning you put $3,000 in, it grows in the account. You didn't get the tax benefit to begin with. And then when you take it out in retirement, you don't have to pay tax on it. So it grows tax-free, as we see at 59 and a half. And if you had it for 5 years, those are the two requirements to avoid the 10%. So we see you have $60,000 in retirement. You pull $5,000 out of your Roth 401k. You only have to pay tax on the $60,000. You don't have to pay tax on the Roth money. So that's kind of the benefit and the difference between the two. Do you want to pay taxes now or pay them later? A good way to think of this is in your lower income learning or earning years. You're just starting your first job. You're not making a bunch of money for income. You're probably going to look more towards that Roth side because you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. You're not going to get a lot of benefit for taking a tax benefit now, but you will later. So it's a good idea to put money in a Roth. In your higher income earning years, you're going to have a lot of more income pushing you up in those higher tax brackets. You're going to want to reduce your income. By doing that, you're going to be putting money away in the traditional side of your 401k. All right. Matching. So a lot of people probably already know what matching is. It's pretty much your employer is willing to, put some money in your 401k plan or 403b on your behalf. The company has let's say the company has a match of 3%. If you put 3% in to your 401k, they'll put 3%. If you put 2%, they'll only put 2%. If you put 10% in, they'll still only put in 3%. Some other kind of matching that is offered, 2 matches, sometimes there's like 100% up to 3%, and then 50% match on the next 5% or up to 5%. There's also profit sharing that can be within your 401k, meaning your employer is willing to put money on your behalf into your 401k, a set dollar amount. Lots of people I talk to don't know what their match is. And this is free money that you're leaving on the table if you're not putting money within your 401k. So be sure, talk to your employer, talk to your HR, look at your plan documents, see what that match is so you're fully taking advantage of it. Vesting. Vesting is how employers want to retain their employees. Okay. They have vesting schedules on the money that they put in. Okay. So if they're putting in that 3% match, sometimes you have to work for a certain amount of years before you can have that money if you were to leave for a different company. Okay. A lot of misconceptions I see is, hey, I left my company, they took money from me. Your employer does not take money from you. You just didn't satisfy the vesting schedule or didn't work there a certain amount of years to have that money. But remember, your contributions that you put in, that you personally take out of your paycheck and put in, you can take those with you anywhere. There is no vesting schedule. Those can be taken anywhere you go if you were to get fired or leave a company. Here are the 2 most common that you tend to see. One's called a 3-year cliff. Another is a graded vesting schedule. So in the first example, let's say your employer put in $3,000 in your 401k and you work there 2 years. Well, you're not entitled to any of that if you leave the company or get fired. All right. But if you stay that third year and you satisfy that, you're entitled to that full $3,000. If you were to leave the company and maybe move somewhere else, you can move that to a different 401k at your new employer. Graded vesting is you get a certain percent of your employer's contributions every year. Another thing that you might see on your paycheck, something called safe harbor. Safe harbor means that your employer contributions are automatically invested, meaning the minute that they're putting your account, you can take that with you if you were to leave your company. Always worth looking at the vesting schedule, especially if you're thinking of leaving a company, is, hey, if I only have to work a couple more weeks to satisfy this vesting schedule, maybe I'll stick around a couple more weeks so I get the full vesting. Something to think about when you're thinking of leaving. So what are the biggest common misconceptions I see within a 401k? All right, first one, you can only contribute up to what your employer matches. Couldn't be more wrong. Normally I see, hey, are you max funding your 401k? I'll get yes. I'm like, how much you putting in? They said 3%. I said 3%, is that what your employer matches? They're like, yeah. Well, if you make $50,000 and you're putting in $1,500, you are not max funding your 401k. As you can see in 2023, you're able to put in up to $22,500 into your 401k. If you're over 50, you can put an additional $7,500 on top of that. So no, just because your employer is putting in 3% does not mean you can only put in 3%. You can put additional money in up to those limits, the 22,500 plus the additional 7,500 if you're over 50. All right, next one. You are entitled to all your employer's matching contributions. As we discussed, no, you're not. If you're there for a short while and you don't satisfy that vesting schedule that's on there, you don't get their employer match contributions, but you do always get the money that you personally put into it. All right, if I put money into my Roth 401k or 403b, they're not going to match my contribution. That's not true. If you put money within your Roth 401k or 403b, Normally, the employer's contributions will go in the traditional side of that 401k or 403b. And the reason for that is so they get the tax benefit of putting it in there as well. This is subject to change with the new Secure Act 2.0, so this could change coming up here. Another one, hey, the only way I can access this money without a penalty is I have to be 59 and a half. Well, that is true. Sometimes there are loans that you can take from your 401k plan. These loans, normally you pretty much borrow money from it, and normally it's set up where you have to start paying back that loan, and you don't have to pay that penalty for that. Sometimes what happens though is you end up losing your job or you get fired. Well, now at that time, that's a triggering event to repay back that loan. And if you still owe $5,000, $10,000 of that loan, you're going to have to find the money to pay that back, or else you are going to have to pay the taxes and the penalty for it. So they are sometimes a good, a loan option, but keep in mind, if you end up leaving the employer, you're going to have to pay that back, or else you're going to have to pay the penalties associated. All right, that's all we have for the 401k and 403b side. Moving on to health insurance. I get a lot of questions on the health insurance side. Main key terms you need to know: deductible, what comes out of your pocket before the plan begins to pay a portion. What is that? So that's pretty much, hey, sometimes it's $200, $500, $1,500 that you have to pay before your insurance kicks in. All right. Copay, a set dollar amount you pay for a covered healthcare service. Normally this is like when you have a checkup, maybe it's $25, $30. You have to pay that set amount in order to get that service. Coinsurance is a shared cost between you and the employer. Normally once you reach the deductible. So let's say the deductible is $1,500 and your total cost for care was $3,000. You're going to have to pay that $1,500. And then that other $1,500 is shared between you and the employer. Normally it's like an 80-20. Sometimes it's different than that, meaning the insurance company is going to pay 80% and you have to pay the remaining 20%. Out-of-pocket maximum, most that you will have to pay in a given year. Sometimes it's $8,000, $15,000, meaning if you hit those limits that have come out of your pocket, insurance is going to cover the rest after that. Last one I don't have on here, but it's premium. You have to pay a premium to have health insurance. So normally it's $100, $200, sometimes $300, $400 a month that you pay to have health insurance. Those are the five main terms that you'll need to know as you look into the different options. All right. So when we're talking about health insurance, normally there's two main different types of plans. You can actually have a lot more, but these are the main two I see. A low deductible plan or a high deductible plan. Low deductible meaning less money you need to pay before health coverage kicks in. All right. Meaning, hey, you could have $0, $150, $200 deductible. That's all you have to pay before your insurance kicks in. They tend to have more co-pays, meaning a straight dollar amount, or higher co-insurance. They're willing to cover more. Okay, well, what do you have to give for this, better coverage insurance? Higher premiums. More is going to come out of your paycheck to have these low deductible plans. All right. Who does this benefit? Why would I get a low deductible plan? Are normally for people that have many prescriptions or who visit healthcare facilities more often. They know they're going to have this type of, they're going to have this healthcare to take care of. So they want to make sure they don't have to pay a lot out of pocket. High deductible plans. Higher deductible plans means more money you need to pay before health coverage kicks in. All right. Normally these plans are $1,500, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000. You have to pay out of pocket before insurance is kicking in. What's the benefit of this? Lower premiums, less is taken out of your paycheck. Sometimes these can be, $50, $100 a month instead of the $300 to $400 a month. Sometimes it can even be more than that on the low deductible side. So this is the way to keep premiums down, more in your pocket. These tend to have less co-pays and lower co-insurance coverage, just not as high as coverage. But you do have the ability to open up an HSA plan, which we'll be discussing in a little bit here. Who wants a high deductible plan? Who is this for? These plans are useful for people that don't really go to healthcare facilities, don't have a lot of prescriptions. They do that annual checkup. but really don't go to the doctor for any other reason. Maybe there is an emergency, but that would be about it. So when deciding between the two, really think about, hey, do I have a lot of prescription costs? Do I go to the doctor often? If not, then maybe we look at a high deductible plan, start putting money away somewhere else in case something does happen. If you know that you do tend to go to the health get a lot of health care, you're going to have to maybe go with the low deductible plan. Like I said, these are just the main two that I see, but ask your HR department or employer to learn more about all your healthcare options. Sometimes there's several. All right. Moving on to the HSA and FSA accounts. HSA stands for Health Savings Account. FSA stands for a Flexible Spending Account. These are both accounts used for healthcare expenses, and they're a way to pay for healthcare expenses at a tax advantage level. So just like the example from the 401k, if you're making $50,000 a year and you contribute $3,000 to your HSA or FSA for the year, you now only have to pay tax on $47,000. You don't have to pay tax on $3,000 of it because it was put in your HSA or FSA plan. All right. And let's talk about the bigger benefit. Not only do you get to grow this money tax deferred because you didn't pay tax on it right away, but if you use it for a healthcare expense, it's actually tax-free coming out. You don't have to pay tax on any of the money if it's used for a qualified expense for healthcare. So not only do you get the benefit on the way in, you can actually get it on the way out as well. Really understanding the difference between the two, starting with the health savings account. Employee owned, meaning you own the health savings account. If you leave your employer, you can take it with you wherever you want. You need a HSA qualified high deductible health plan. Normally you'll see this when you're filling out your employer benefits. But normally the qualifications include, you need a deductible of at least $1,500 if you're single, $3,000 if you're family. Your out-of-pocket maximum should not exceed $7,500 and for self and $15,000 for family. But sometimes it says on your plan, it's an HSA qualified high deductible health plan. These accounts, what a lot of people don't know is most of these accounts, you have the ability to invest the money within the HSA account. So if you're put in, $2,000 a year in your HSA, sometimes you can move that money to an investable account where you can invest it for the future. As mentioned before, tax-free if used for a qualified health expense. So you get that benefit when it comes out. You can roll this money over from year to year. It's your account. You can, if you put $2,000 in it and you don't use that $2,000, you can move it to the next year and use it in that year. Some people just continue to put money in their health savings account, never take money out of it, and then use it as an account in retirement because they know in retirement, health expenses tend to get more expensive. So what they do is they put a lot of money in their health savings account, use it as a retirement account for their healthcare needs. So when they have it, they can take money out tax-free. So you can hold this account as long as you want, and you can roll it from year to year. Let's see how this differs from the flexible spending account. All right. Same thing. It's used for healthcare and it comes out tax-free if used for a qualified health expense, but the employer owns the account. It is not portable, meaning if you leave your employer, you cannot take that money with you. All right. Traditional health plan, you don't need a high deductible plan. So when you have that, maybe a low deductible plan or the money that, those higher plans for cost, you can put money within a flexible spending account. You can't invest in a flexible spending account, unlike a HSA account. Also, sometimes there's dependent care flexible spending accounts that can be used for reimbursing childcare. But it's a use it or lose it. Health savings account, you're able to roll money from year to year. Flexible spending account, you have to use it in that given year. So sometimes if you put $2,000 on it and you don't use it in that year, by the start of new year, that money's gone, you don't get to use it. All right. That's why you can't invest in it because you can't keep it for more than a year. Sometimes you can have like $500 roll over, but that depends on the specific type of plan. But what people normally do is they know their healthcare expenses So they're willing to put money into a flexible spending account, knowing they're going to spend that money on healthcare for the year. All right. So you never want to put more in a flexible spending account that you're going to be, than you want to spend, then you're not going to spend, or else you're going to lose it. So when you think about the difference between the HSA and the FSA, what are the difference between the two? How am I going to decide which is which? Healthcare savings or a health savings account, you save money on healthcare premiums because of a higher deductible. You have ownership of the account. You can maximize tax savings because you continue to put money into it. You can invest for future healthcare expenses because you can roll it over, and you can use it for health and prescriptions. Flexible spending account, you can still use for health and prescriptions, smaller deductible, you're willing to pay a higher premium. Prioritize near-term healthcare expenses. That's the biggest difference. Prioritize near-term or invest in the future healthcare. Manage significant prescription costs. If you have a lot of prescriptions that you use and you're going to have to pay money for those prescriptions, sometimes putting in a flexible spending account can help pay for those. Both are great for reducing taxes, but really it comes down to if you want a high deductible plan, low deductible plan, or if you want be able to invest it and use for the future, or if you want it in today's, to use it in current year's health expenses. All right, we've gone over a lot with the FSA and the HSA plans, but moving into the insurance plans, starting with group life insurance. Group life insurance is pretty much you and sometimes your employer pay the premium, and in return, you list someone as a beneficiary, you'll see the death benefit if something were to happen to you. Normally, this is like $50,000, $100,000, one-time salary or two-time salary. This is to cover if something were to happen to you. If you were to pass away, is your family covered to help with those everyday expenses? All right. The mortgage, the car payment, healthcare expenses, just every monthly expense that you have that doesn't go away if one of you were to pass away. That's why people look into group life insurance, because it's normally a lot cheaper through your work. And sometimes it's maybe already paid for and you don't have to pay anything. All right. One thing to keep in mind, though, is in most cases, you cannot take it with you. Sometimes you can, but you have to pay a higher premium if you leave your company. And that's called a conversion, typically more expensive. Sometimes there are spousal coverages where you can, if you have a spouse, you can put a small policy on them if something were to happen to them. But employer coverage can sometimes get expensive, especially in your later working years. But the biggest thing to keep in mind is you can't take it with you. Meaning if you were to leave your company, maybe there's a hostile work environment, or you just don't like it there anymore, or looking for something else, and you decide to leave, well, you don't have insurance anymore unless your new company has insurance. That's why people look for individual coverage. They look for themselves. That way, if they do leave their company, they're able to have some money set aside in their own life insurance, so they're more flexible to move around in a job. So always be in mind that your group life insurance cannot be taken with you. And it's always worth looking into possible coverage outside of your group life insurance, especially if they only offer a certain amount, let's say 200,000, and you need 600,000 of coverage, you're going to have to look for additional coverage outside your employer. Disability insurance. This is the same thing as life insurance, but for disabilities, meaning if you were to get disabled, you now, get a benefit tied to your income. Sometimes it's 50% of your income, maybe it's 70% of your income. And sometimes there's even a maximum of what they're willing to cover. But one fun fact I read, 1 out of every 4 20-year-olds will experience some type of disability before reaching into retirement. I thought that was quite shocking. And that's not just, I fell off a ladder, or, I was out skiing and I hit a tree. This can be, sickness, diseases that happen that just make you not able to work. And if you're trying to, cover for your family or yourself, there's still bills that need to be paid if you're not bringing in income. So it's definitely worth looking into disability coverage. All right. So let's say you made, 100,000 a year, and they're willing to cover, 50% of your coverage, 50% of your wage if you were to become disabled. Well, you have to think about that. If you cut your your income in half to 50%, that's $50,000. Are you going to still be able to pay for that mortgage? Are you going to be able to pay for all those expenses, those car payments? If not, maybe we need to look into additional coverage for disability insurance. You can do that through your employer, or you have to go on the open market and get individuals group disability insurance. Similar to group life insurance, you cannot take it with you. If you leave your employer. So definitely worth, maybe having a little bit of both options for flexibility reasons. In addition, sometimes I've seen this. Let's say someone makes, a couple $100,000 a year, and 50% of coverage, it covers, or 70% of coverage, it covers. Let's do 50%. $100,000 of coverage they're willing to get covered. Okay, but there's sometimes a maximum. Sometimes that maximum is 75,000. So not only did you not get a full 50%, you're getting less than 50% because there's a maximum on the coverage. Definitely worth looking into. I've seen it where you think you're getting 50%, but it's actually less than that because there's a maximum they're willing to pay out. So definitely take a look at that. Lastly, sometimes there's elimination periods you might see on there. That's pretty much the amount of days you have to wait before disability insurance kicks in. Sometimes it's 30, 60, 90 days before the disability coverage kicks in for your benefit. That's another good reason to keep what's called an emergency fund, or money set aside in maybe a savings account where it's, it's very liquid. You're able to take money in and out of it for these types of emergencies. All right. We're going to discuss pensions here. Pensions is pretty much an employee benefit that commits the employer to make regular contributions to a pool of money that is set aside in order to fund payments. Wow, Vince, that was very exciting. That probably meant nothing to any of you. Pretty much all it means is your employer puts money into a big pool, and once you retire, they're going to end up sending out payments to you as a pension, they call it. Very similar to Social Security, where you're putting money from your check into Social Security, and then you get a payout at the end. It works very similar. Traditional pension plans have become increasingly rare in the private sector. You really don't see them anymore. I personally don't really see them that much, unless, maybe you're a teacher, firefighter, police officer, or work for some public sector. You work for the state. Definitely people in the state of Minnesota that work for the state have these type of pensions. So, there's two types of pensions: defined benefit or defined contribution. We're just going to be talking about the defined benefit in this case. So normally this is calculated off a formula. So maybe it's, your average lifetime salary, or, your 5 highest earning years times years of service times, there's some kind of calculation that is given for it. That kind of calculates your income in retirement. One thing to keep in mind, you don't have to pay, or you don't have to invest anything in these plans. Okay, the pension is managed by the employer. Okay, you don't have to pick any investments with these. The employer manages these plans. If you leave the plan, you can sometimes take it with you of your contributions that you put in. Sometimes you're able to roll those contributions into an IRA, maybe your new 401k at a new employer, or leave it where it's at. Sometimes they force you out of it though, so always worth taking a look at. All pensions have their own rules and when you can start drawing off of it. Sometimes they'll say, hey, at age 62, you can take it out, or hey, if you've worked here 30 years, you can take it out at 60, or hey, 65, you can't take money without getting a penalty. A lot of rules associated with them, definitely worth looking into if you have one. Pensions are considered pre-tax when you start taking it. So what does that mean? That means you have to pay taxes on it when you receive it. So let's say your pension is $60,000 a year in retirement. You have to pay taxes on that. So let's say you're in the 12% tax bracket, maybe 7% state. That's 19% that will end up going to taxes for that account. So always look. These are always pre-tax, so not all the money you get is what you can take that you get to actually put in your pocket. biggest misconception I see with people with these pension plans is I hear it all the time. It's, well, I don't have to save for retirement because I have a pension. Okay, that might be the case. Here's what I tend to see happen, especially in today's world. People are leaving their employer, going somewhere else. Sometimes they get fired, laid off, which, because of the way they're calculated, you have to work there many years before these pensions are worth anything. So if you only work there, 2-3 years, that pension is not going to be doing much for you. So they can sometimes be a very good value add in retirement if you stay there a long time in kind of that public sector. If not, definitely worth looking at other avenues to start saving. That includes the 401k, 403bs. Sometimes they're deferred comp plans, they call them, especially if you work for the state of Minnesota, they have that type of plan. But just keep that in mind. If you want to keep that flexibility, don't always bank on your pension being what's going to be able to save your retirement. All right. I'm just going to briefly talk on this. I know we're running out of time here. So stock options and restricted stock units, pretty much all these is you pretty much have ownership in your company. This is ownership that, revolving around, how the company is doing. So if the company is doing good, these stock options are going to be worth a lot more. If they're not doing so good, then maybe they're not going to be worth as much. These can be very complicated, especially when it comes to the tax side of things. What do I have to pay in taxes once I receive them? What do I do once they're vested? There's tons of questions when it comes to employer stock options, and they all work a little bit different. So that's all we're going to touch on, the stock options today, just because of time. But we might, have a future webinar all about stock options, because you could put, 30, 40 minutes into one of just employer stock options themselves. At the end of the day, benefits can be just as important as your salary and hourly pay. You want to be sure to understand all your benefits when you start a new position. You don't want to leave money on the table because you didn't quite understand how your benefits worked. You didn't know when you could start your 401k plan. Some people I've heard, didn't start their 401k plan until 2 years in, even though they were able to do it in year one. It's just things like this that I see people leave money on the table all the time when it comes to the benefits, mainly because they just don't understand. And that's why, we had this presentation today, kind of help you get a better understanding of how these all work together. Benefits can also be a really good way for extra compensation without directly asking for it. So definitely worth looking for that new position, looking for some kind of raise, maybe look on the benefit side of it as well. All right. Well, I just want to say thank you for taking your time today, listening to me kind of go over different employee benefits and kind of misconceptions that I see come through my office all the time. If you want to reach me, best way is probably going to be through the email, vdarling@focusfinancial.com. And you can also reach by phone as well. But definitely appreciate your guys' time today. And I think we're moving into the Q&A session.